Hi everyone, welcome back to Salsa South. My name is Heem, that's Nick, and today our very special guest is Victor. We'll give him a chance to introduce himself, but just going ahead from his professional profile online, he's a self-employed business development professional who has started a cluster in Sweden for a lot of different biotech and longevity companies. That's a little bit of the background that we have gotten. So, Victor, if you could just in a minute or two give us a quick background of yourself and tell us how you got involved in the business development side of this whole biotech industry.
So thank you very much. A great pleasure to be here on this podcast. So have been very interested in the the longevity sector, the business of being able to impact human health through targeting aging for well over a decade by now. About 15 years ago, I got started to get interested, and I studied molecular biology at the university in Sweden, and I have been working in this area for several years since I graduated at a couple of different companies in the US, BioH Labs in San Francisco, and Icor Life Sciences in Syracuse, New York. And then I also worked in Switzerland, in Zurich, at a company called Regeneration, which invests in different business related to longevity or invested. And and after that, I have been helping various clients, which is something I'm doing now. So I live in Malta, and I help different clients within the longevity biotech sector with various tasks. And recently, I helped set up a cluster for in Sweden where longevity-related companies can meet investors and understand the field better. And I should also add that I have been a director for an NGO, and I'm still that based in Brussels, that it's called Healthy Life Extension Society, which has organized multiple events and conferences on this topic of aging research and business development for longevity companies. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for accepting the invite. We think that, this is a really, to those watching, first off, thank you. So like and subscribe really fast. But to those watching, Heem and I are really interested in having Victor on because this is like our first like legit biotech entrepreneurship oriented guests we've had. Usually we have people who are in biotech who are in science, like going towards PhDs. But this is going to be a really, really interesting episode to hear Victor talk about the business side. So, Victor, why don't you go ahead and elaborate a little bit on kind of just what the experience is like being sort of like an entrepreneur, a business consultant, working in biotech, and if you could go ahead and explain, what you're working on, this kind of anti-aging science, like just go ahead and explain in like a sentence or two what that might be. I know, and also before you, I'm sorry, Victor, you got to find him on LinkedIn. You got to find Victor on LinkedIn if you're interested. He has a newsletter. They're super quick reads and they're super informative. How often do you post those, Victor?
Every couple of weeks, roughly.
Yeah, and they're great. They're great. I was reading them this week, and they're just super informative. 1, 2, 3 minute reads, and you read the comments, and it's like a breath of fresh air. But please, can you elaborate on kind of what this area of biotech you're working in?
Yes, sure. So what you would call broadly the longevity biotech sector, it's like an umbrella term for various companies that aims to intervene in different aspects of human aging to affect multiple diseases at once. Because most biotech outside are very often oriented towards a specific disease, like cancer or cardiovascular disease or a specific genetic condition and so on. But the longevity biotech sector aims to be able to holistically target multiple diseases at once by intervening in fundamental aging processes. And those have been, they are a bit subject of debate who they actually are, but there's a very famous paper called Hallmarks of Aging. It's about 10 years old, where people have come to the conclusion, and I think it's fairly a consensus in the research field, of what we need to go after in order to restore human health broadly. So there are multiple hallmarks, such as cellular senescence. You get old cells in your body that accumulate with age. And so this is not defined as a particular disease, but depending on which organs where you have a accumulation of too many senescent cells, you get a specific disease in that organ. Like you have too many senescent cells in your cardiovascular system, you get cardiovascular disease. In your kidneys, in your liver, you get the kidney and liver disease, and so on. So, but if you can target this particular hallmark, too many old damaged senescent cells, then you can restore health across multiple body systems and domains at once. And that's a bit of a very new way of viewing biotech and healthcare, that you can actually prevent rather than having a drug, for example, like a statin drug that you have to be on for life that constantly suppresses a problem. You can instead repair and restore. So you do a therapy once, and then you don't have to repeat it until like a decade later, because you restore health.
As a business consultant, and you're working with different clients, do you have a specific clientele that you kind of gravitate more towards? Because when I think of longevity, I think of kind of like anti-aging, cancer research. So do you get drawn more towards like gene therapy, cell therapy, or kind of what do you look for in your clients to kind of push their science forward?
Well, that's very different, because gene therapy can potentially do a lot, but it's also a very, very hard area. It's a very high risk, high reward field for sure. So many things might be done by small molecule instead, if it's achievable as an approach. And so it's a very general question. It strongly depends. But whether as well as something is going to be actionable and do something for the market. And because if you look at the fields that have grown very rapidly within the longevity biotech, you see epigenetic reprogramming. For example, you restore cellular age, at least partially, and you inject those cells that you have restored back into the tissues, and you get an improvement in functionality. But this is, of course, far away from any human implementations. It's very hard to predict the actual impact and when it's going to go to the market. But we know with all the investments that is coming into it, that it's something that the investors see as very promising as well. So there are certain low-hanging fruits, you could call them, and certain fields where you get a lot of excitement and investment, and where you could potentially then see a lot of growth happening, regardless of the time horizon, where you actually have come over the translational path and can deliver something to the patient.
So you seem to have a very foundational, like strong foundation of the science of the thing. So what's your background in like did you ever work in any labs before you got into consulting and business development? Because, or did you like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So my formal degree is I have a bachelor and master in the molecular biology. So and the people who want to work within this area of research often ask what exactly should you study. But the problem is that you really have to self-learn, because there's no program that is going to deliver all of the things that you need. So I would advise people to have a study, for example, any general biology program, but you have to understand the specific areas. You should do internships and work at different labs. So personally, I did a couple of internships, and I did one on stem cells in Germany, and I did one working on C. elegans in my home country, and I also then went to the US as a research intern in San Francisco and at Syracuse in New York. So I worked on both the sarcopenia and cellular senescence and age-related macular degeneration as a few indications within the aging field, but of course with a broad aging biology as the thread that I always looked for.
We had the privilege of talking to Evandro Fang from University of Oslo, who works on C. elegans as well. And he was basically, his whole thing was kind of finding molecules that would give mitochondria a lot of their energy back, because he thinks that that's like the main thing for especially neurodegenerative diseases. If you give the mitochondria its energy back, then they can have enough energy to keep continuously getting the trash out of the system, and that's the main contributor to age, when you have a lot of things that are
Yeah.
not getting filtered out of your system, and that like uh kills all your cells and everything. So What did you do? And my question would be like, so going back to your introduction, what did you do in San Francisco and how did you get connected with all of that stuff here in the United States?
Through my because I have a strong contact network, and that is where I think that I was able to get those different positions. And I have always said that I go out of my way in order to gain the experience necessary to be able to work with what I'm passionate about. So all I can say there is that you have to be make sure to go to a lot of conferences, go meet, talk to a lot of people, read up on the research, and get as much experience as you can. So
That's awesome. And do you have any specific stories that you shared with us? Like from the people you've consulted, how far have they gotten? Are they in clinical trials with their research right now? Or like, do they actually have a product out there? Or are they really early stage right now?
it's mostly early stage, yes. That is a general thing. I mean, there are not that many companies in the aging field currently that have clinical trials in humans, depending on how you define it. Of course, in Europe, it's quite well known now. Rejuvenate Biomed, a Belgian company that works on sarcopenia, they have a combination of already approved drug that are being repurposed for aging, and they are doing clinical trials in humans. But I do think this is going to change a lot in the next few years, and uh, there are going to be a lot of more companies going to clinical stage, and so that it's going to be very, very interesting. But the problem is that many of these aging biotech companies now have to pick indications that might not really fit the aging narrative, so to speak, because you can have a clinical trial for a specific disease where you affect an underlying interesting aging pathway, but it fails to improve a particular disease condition that you were forced to pick because the aging indication itself could not be classified as a disease indication to pick. So you get a readout that is suboptimal, and you might even lose investors' money and fail despite having a product that in theory can work. So
Yeah, and that's just how it kind of goes. Go ahead, Heem. Sorry.
And so it's kind of funny. So when I think of anti-aging and everything, the best method is obviously prevention rather than getting any treatments. Like if you have a good diet, good lifestyle and everything, you're aging a little bit slower and everything. And it's just kind of funny because most people, if they never get a disease, they never think that, oh, all my good diet, my good lifestyle is helping me. First, they need to get sick and then they need to take a medicine to feel better. And then they'll be like, oh, now I'm like healthy. But prevention is such a big thing. And do you have any companies that you've met with that are trying a lot of preventative medicine stuff?
well, I think that is fairly common. If you, I mean, a lot of longevity clinics try to do custom-made lifestyle plans for their clients, and that is going to optimize their health and definitely reduce the risk of death before age 80. But we actually, I mean, we don't have the good data even what is the optimal lifestyle if you can, live to 110 through a healthy lifestyle. That's not really clear. What is very clear is that you reduce the risk for premature uh, conditions like heart disease and obesity related illnesses if you have a healthy lifestyle. But this is, of course, an experimental area because you see all these biomarkers coming up as well, like epigenetic clocks, proteomic clocks, where you can measure exactly how well somebody's aging, and then you can intervene before you get seriously sick, and you can target that specific problem far before it surfaces into a dangerous condition. And I think definitely medicine is becoming more preventive like that for the future. So
So explain your day to day for really quick. So when you're doing business development, is this somebody in a lab who is so early stage that they don't even know which disease indication to go for? I know longevity is more like your whole health, but do you help them by making presentations and comparing the entire market for them? And then
yes,
after that, do you connect them to other investors? Then you kind of make it all happen. So what is the day to day basically?
yeah. Well, for example, doing landscaping of different areas of interest and everything from competitors in the field to specific technical challenges, whether it's related to how research have previously been published and conducted, and so on. So yeah, market analysis and competitive landscaping, that is an important part of it, and the scouting for different business opportunities that would fit any criteria, and helping people out that way. So
are you working mostly with like universities or like private investors,
no,
like, or
no, not universities, no.
no universities? Okay.
No.
So where are these clients coming from? Are they like coming out of other biotech businesses? Are they trying to start their own? Like, how are they able to kind of get this start, and how are you able to help them jumpstart?
Yeah, so can you repeat the latest that you said, second part?
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, the first part was like, like where did these people come from? And then the second part is like, other than landscaping, is there any other strategies that you use to really help push them forward?
Yeah, well, trying to connect them to the right key opinion leaders, which will often be able to address the specific challenges that they are facing, and so being a good connector, that is another part of it.
So having this big network, how often are your services like seeked out for? Like how many clients can you usually take on at once?
Well, it strongly depends, because right now what I have been having is certain clients that take up a lot of my time. So I don't have a lot of small things at the moment, but I'm definitely open for those opportunities. And with the recently launched Swedish longevity cluster, I'm sure there will be a lot of startups and potentially academic collaborations as well, that are going to come up once this is launched later now in October. So
Could you describe for me kind of the entrepreneurial landscape in Sweden, and if not just in Europe as a whole? Because I feel like Heem and I learned a lot about entrepreneurship, but it was very much so based in the United States. We know that there are investors in Europe, but very much based, a lot in the coast in the United States. So kind of what's that
yeah,
ecosystem like?
yeah. Well, I mean, a very general point here is that in US you're more lucky because you have easy access to more high risk capital and the funds that are willing to invest. Europe is much more conservative and go after the low hanging fruits. That applies to everything, and not only biotech recently. So I would say, if you look at longevity, there's a Bay Area cluster ecosystem of companies, and while Boston dominates biotech in general, I would say Boston has much less longevity biotech than Bay Area. And then you have Israel. Israel, there's actually a cluster of biotech and longevity focused companies as well, if you count Israel as a part of Europe. But apart from that, I would say if you go for biotech in general, you have Basel in Switzerland, and a few other places like the Uppsala, Stockholm area where I'm from, where there's a disproportionate amount of biotech companies as well. And but then the question is, of course, what is a longevity biotech company? And the thing here is that I don't really care much about the branding. I don't care about what they call themselves. I care about what works. For example, a company that never speaks about aging, but that has a whatever molecule or research or compound that can potentially be repurposed or harnessed in any way to treat an age-related disease. I consider that a longevity company, even if it doesn't have the intention and call themselves and brand themselves. So
So, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you were somehow, or like for a short time, you were part of Vita DAO. So, do you still connect with anyone in Vita DAO? Do you use them as the investors for any of the companies you're consulting for?
yeah, well, I mean, Vita DAO is a DAO, so I don't have one position there, but I do sometimes participate in there. But I think it's a very interesting idea to use decentralized organization for longevity purposes. So I hope they can grow further and succeed with making more investments.
Definitely. I think we connected with few people because on the Vita DAO's website, the whole IP NFT project they have going on, and you can help fund direct labs that you are interested in. I think that's a great way to like kind of decentralize research because a lot of the things that you're interested in, like some people who have families that go through cancer, they want to keep investing and like donating to labs that are doing that, but there's no easy access to it. But if you see this whole project that they're doing with VitaDAO, you see that okay, there's one lab that's going for one disease that affected my family member, and I want the cure for this, then you could directly donate to them. And I think that's a great way to like bring investors in and also like share your work with everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because it's a very public facing community, like that, the people, when people feel that they are getting something in return and can talk to the relevant person directly, then I think that is the future, that people are going to understand how money is being used and how it actually leads to progress for everybody.
Exactly. And have you personally used any of like the biological aging clocks, like the oral swabs for longevity markers and all of that stuff?
Yeah. I have personally tested them. Yes, uh, of course they are valid in the sense that they are tested on a lot of people, and they whatever they measure increases with age, and that is would then be a potentially good aging clock, whether it's proteomic or based on glycans or based on epigenome or so.
Yeah, it's
The
really
aging
cool
clock is
stuff.
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is super cool. Yeah,
In
I
fact,
just think
when
that the
some people go ahead.
no, go ahead, Heem.
No, I was just gonna say when some people combine the aging clock with your heritage, what is it called? Like when they look at where you came from, where your
Like
whole ancestry,
23 and
oh,
Me.
ancestry.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they combine that with the ancestry, I think that's a very niche market where you can like really appeal to people's interest because sometimes people feel insecure. It's like if you show them, oh wow, I'm actually a few years epigenetically older than I am right now. People
Yeah.
don't like seeing that, but if you can combine it with some other interesting things like, hey, this is where your ancestors are from, like I think it's a very interesting way to like approach everybody's mindset.
Yeah, and I think those clocks also, I mean, since they correspond to health as well, it's actually very difficult to sometimes separate health and longevity. But many of these epigenetic markers do improve if you live a unusually healthy lifestyle and if you're very proactive. And some people who take a more experimental therapies that are not given at the typical doctor's office have also reported some decreases in epigenetic age. So you can see those clocks and aging measurements leading to people in this biohacking field where people try to do everything they can to stay as healthy for as long as possible, and you get some kind of score back, the bit of an improvement, and I think that's very rewarding for people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I have a quick question. In the United States, like especially working with like, studying stem cells and regenerative medicine, and longevity absolutely falls under that umbrella of regenerative medicine. In the United States, there's a lot of like, I feel like some pushback from the public in general. How does the European, how like does the European population take in like these kinds of studies and this type of medication? Are they, for it, against it, or like what's kind of just like the feel?
Well, I mean, I do think that a lot of people treat anti-aging with skepticism if you phrase it that way, because there's a bad connotation of being quackery and things like that. And I do think US is a bit better in Europe in the sense that people tend to be quite innovative and willing to do more high risk businesses as well. So that's why you have the growing ecosystem on the especially the West Coast. But I do think that there is some skepticism against it, but I also know that people are going to purchase the products once they come on the market, which they will do. So the situation is a bit like nobody wants to wants to develop the computer, but when the computer comes, everybody buys it. I mean, it's a bit like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
How are the government reimbursement programs over there? Like if there's a drug that comes out that's a little bit expensive, do they market cheaper because their government goals are aligned with the health and lifespan?
That's strongly dependent on which European country you are talking about. It's not necessarily European Union law that governs those things.
So, for example, in Sweden, since
yeah.
that's your hometown, that's your home country, what are the things, the government incentives in Sweden like?
Well, in Sweden, we have the government reimburses a lot of things to a very high level. We would definitely say that. So I don't see that they would potentially treat an aging therapy that works very differently. But it's hard to say when you have this, because many of them, I guess, will fall under like an RMAT, regenerative medicine advanced therapy. It will be in that region. So I cannot give a simple answer to how they would react to that. But they are certainly not doing any experimental things like lifespan extending drugs like metformin cannot be given to the general population, and it's not recommended, for example. So they
Yeah.
follow.
Metformin has been in the recent years really come out as a big superstar drug because it reverses the age of the thymus, right? Because it makes the thymus a little bit bigger so that it keeps your immune system better and for longer. And it's
Yeah,
turned out to
inflammation.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, turned out to be huge.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing because a lot of people take this for type 2 diabetes, and these people are much healthier than you would have expected them to be. And some data even suggests that they get less cancer and cardiovascular disease than healthy people, despite most of them being diabetic and overweight and so on. So it's uncertain to see what would it do if healthy people took this drug, but that is not known. The lifespan in organisms when it extends is not that high. It's like 5-10%, but it's rather consistent at least. So it's interesting for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so Nick actually had the privilege to work and do an internship at a Cleveland Cord Blood Center. So they store umbilical cords. So is that something that you see in European Union? Is there a infrastructure where people, if they want to, can store umbilical cords? Because here there's some incentives, the government incentives, where they reimburse you for certain amount of the umbilical cord and placenta that might come out. So
I am not
are
that
there
updated on that. I do know it varies a lot between different countries. In Sweden, for example, every individual when they are born automatically gets their part of their blood in a government register that is used to screen for particular genetic diseases. But apart from that, I'm not aware of any mandated or encouraged incentives like that.
Yeah, there's cord blood banking and cell banking in general. There's private and public, so it just kind of depends on which one you choose. Private, you'll pay. Public, you can kind of store, but I don't think you have as much. What's the word? You have as much pull on what happens to your cells, so you can get like donated if there's a match. But it's really cool. I loved working in that cord blood bank. I worked in product and business development internally with them, and it was just an amazing experience. And it's kind of what I want to do after I graduate. I kind of want to do what you're doing. I want to do business consulting. I want to work with other people and kind of help people along this like the early stages and the early steps in their company to really make something cool happen. So yeah, you're doing some of the coolest work at biotech, I think.
Great, yeah.
But yeah, I'm I think that Victor, you've been an unbelievable guest. Heem, do you have any other questions? Because my list
um
is dry.
so when you started your newsletter, what was your goal for the newsletter? What is your intention? Is it to increase awareness of longevity? Is it to gain more uh I don't want to say clients, but gain higher access to a bigger network globally? Because now I'm even subscribed to your newsletter and we just met on LinkedIn, and this is like what's your end goal?
Yes, to spread awareness of this. And that is because I am a very impact focused person. I really want to make a difference, and I really want to make a difference within this ecosystem. And the best way of catalyzing change is by getting people interested and involved, and that they should really pursue this area and convince them, because that is where the impact is being made in the process. Redirecting funding as well to the relevant research of good quality, and growing the ecosystem, because it is growing, but how we know how much time it takes to get this treatment for disease. So how quick can we move? Every day that this can move quicker, the more people can benefit and they get healthier. So
Yeah, I think we're in a really unique part of human history because this is a time where a lot of these remedies and very good solutions for humans are like being available to everybody. You know, maybe 100 years ago, people knew about some drugs or some remedies that helped everybody, but it was only the elites that had access to it. But now with the
yeah,
internet and newsletters like yours, I feel like sharing really crucial information for the betterment of all humans is like easier now.
yes, definitely, it's a very interesting part of human history to be in, when you see this rapid progress and you see a lot of hope. But it's frustrating also to know that there's so much that is going on, and things, the drugs that work in mice, the mice are cured, but it's hard with the translational part. And I think people underestimate that as well, because everybody think that the difficulty is just getting the molecule out, the molecule, and show proof of concept. But it's not necessarily that. It's the whole chain of business development and translating anything into a product that works. That is where a lot of things seem to just, it's like the wall of death, where things just, and that needs to change. It needs to move more rapidly.
That's
So
so
I'm all
true.
about, yeah,
Because one of the professors we talked to at Case Western told me that like we've cured cancer in mice 1,000 times, but as soon as you try that same exact drug in a human, there's different reactions and adverse effects because the biology of a human and a mouse at the end of the day is so different that even as much as you try and do something in a mouse, translating it into humans is very difficult, and sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't.
yes, that's absolutely true. So you have both the purely scientific challenges and all the sociological challenges as well, of trying to implement something and do the correctly made trials as well. Doing a correctly made clinical trial for an aging indication is also a big challenge in getting the readout that makes the company succeed, and being able to get it right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It's incredible. And it's cool where, you know, this whole field's going, regenerative medicine, longevity, like research, and, you know, in 10, 20 years, who knows what's going to be, you know, even off the shelves, both in the United States and in Europe, improving the lives of a lot of people. So, all right, well, I think that's all the time we have today. We want to thank Victor for coming on. You are an amazing guest. We want to stay in contact. Keep texting us on LinkedIn. We'll keep reading your newsletter. Um, I'm really interested in to see how your longevity group in Stockholm that you're starting like fairs. I think it's going to be really cool to kind of see how that group works out. And yeah, Heem, do you have anything else?
That's all for me, Victor. Thank you once again for coming on.
All
Thank you
right.
very much, and I really hope that your podcast continues. It's a great pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, yeah, thank you everybody for watching. If you made it this far, remember, like and subscribe. And yeah, this has been another episode of Cells to Cell. I'm Nick, that's Victor, and that's Heem. See you next time.